Welcome to Cover Book Beat. I'm your host, Roger Nichols. We have a bit of a change in our show today. Instead of a novel or play or poetry, our guest has written a cookbook, and not just any cookbook. Nagi Maeheshi is a culinary force, and you may not know her by name. Chances are you cooked one of her outrageously delicious, exhaustively tested recipes from her hugely popular website, Recipe 10 Eats, which receives 500,000,000 views annually. And yes, that is billion with a B. She also has 5 million with an M social media followers. Born in Japan, raised in Sydney, Australia, she left her job in corporate finance to follow her passion 10 years ago, and that's food. The success led to her first cookbook called simply Dinner. It was awarded Australian Book of the Year in 2023. That's the first time a cookbook has ever received that honor. Also made the New York Times best-selling list. And this is an indicator just how cool she is. She has a food bank, Recipe 10 Meals, where they make and donate more than 130,000 meals and desserts each year to the vulnerable in her community. Her latest is titled Delicious Tonight, contains more than 150 brand new Australian but fully Americanized recipes with 800 variations and 3,000 possible combinations. We are very pleased to welcome Nagi Maeheshi.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Now, priorities have to be set up. We know that there's a definite gap between when things are written and when the books are published. I have to ask, you mentioned your longtime companion, chief taste tester, 12-year-old golden retriever dozer, had some medical issues. Is he still with us?
He is still with us, and I
Oh,
feel very, very fortunate. And he's been joining me on the book tour in Australia. So I feel very lucky, very, very lucky.
well,
Thank you for asking,
we
Roger.
had to know that, had to know that. Were you a cook before you went into becoming a chartered accountant?
No, I went straight out of high school into a full-time chartered accounting role. So yeah, bypassed that.
Was there a specific incident or a series of incidents that say, I'm tired of pushing numbers. I want to be kneading bread or chopping parsley.
You know what it was for me? I was really climbing that corporate ladder. I was working very long hours, and I just woke up one day and I just thought, you know what? I want to give my blood, sweat, and tears to something for my own. And yeah, so I basically took the plunge, left my 9 to 5 job, and went out on my own. So yeah.
I love the fact that you write. By the way, you write very, very well. You really
Oh,
relate to
thank you.
people. You write, on the day I published my first recipe, a grand total of two people visited my website. One was me, the other was my mother. And now you've got 5 million followers. What was that first recipe?
It was sticky pantry chicken, and it's actually the only recipe in my new cookbook that is on my website. So every other recipe is completely new, brand new for the cookbook, especially for the cookbook. So yeah.
So at what point in this transition you say, hey, this thing's going to work out for me?
You know what? It was the month when I made $200 on my website.
All right.
And I know because for 3, 4 months, I was literally in the red. And
Mhm.
I thought, everyone was saying to me, you're crazy. When are you coming back to the real world? And it was just that first month that I finally started earning some income on my website. And I thought, you know what? This has got legs. This is going to happen. And I persisted and yeah, paid off.
Uh, and what changes did you have to make? You talked about Americanizing your recipes beyond, say, converting grams to ounces and liters to cups.
Yeah, a lot of it, I mean, even if it's things like just the names of cuts of steaks, for example,
Mhm.
and fish as well was another big thing. So the common fish in America is not the same names here in Australia, slightly different cooking qualities, and just the names of ingredients as well. So cilantro versus coriander, as we know it.
Mhm.
Um, Even what you have as chili powder over there is different to our chili powder. So I actually have a lot of American ingredients in my pantry. And your cup sizes are actually different to our cup sizes. So I have to test every single recipe I make, every single baking recipe. I test it with your cups and my cups.
Well, that's right. You have imperial gallons as opposed
Yeah,
to whatever we use. I don't know what we call it, but it's different than the imperial gallons. So,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that your actual cup size is a different volume to ours.
wow, it's amazing. I have to ask about this. You've got a strong giving back to the community ethic. Um, that you founded the Recipe 10 Meals. What's the most rewarding part of balancing what you do for this and what you do for the community?
Yeah. Well, for me, what I do on the commercial, what I call the commercial side of my business, which is the income earning side, that is the side that supports and exists to support my food bank. So it's as simple as that. My food bank is the number one priority in my business. Every day, I always tell my team, every day there are 500 people waiting to receive dinner from us. And no matter what's going on in my life and in work, we make sure we get those 500 meals out. And I'm really proud to say, in the 3.5 years since we started it, we've never missed a delivery, not a single day,
That's even in bad weather, which can
even in
happen, but
bad weather. Yeah,
yeah.
no, it really does. Even in public holidays. So Christmas Day, we still do food on Christmas Day.
Oh,
So yeah, so public holidays, it doesn't matter what day it is, we provide the food. So
do you get a lot of feedback from those folks in terms of,
we
hey,
do.
this was particularly wonderful?
We do. We know their favorites and we get what we call love letters from them and they make me cry and and
Oh,
I always say it fuels our motivation. We pin them up on our wall and yeah, but I particularly love the ones we get from kids when they tell us what their favorites are. We always try to, make more of them. So
that's
yeah.
cool. So you're well, you do iterations on everything, including the what, 69 times before you got the vanilla cake recipe right? What?
89. 89.
89.
That was
Right.
89 and that was my record. But you know what, Roger? That was during COVID and I had nothing else to do. So other than sit at home and make vanilla cakes, and there were a lot of healthcare workers that were very, very happy to receive my experiments.
So I have to ask this, what was the final change that you made that said, ah, this is it?
It was actually the original recipe is the one I landed on because I always thought it was perfect as is. What I was trying to do though was just see if I could improve it and test what if I did this, what if I did that, what happens if I use gluten-free flour or
Mhm.
dial up the butter a little bit, etc., etc. A lot of people like to cut down on sugar
Yeah.
in cakes, so I wanted to know what happens if I did that, or what happens if you use cake flour instead of regular flour, and it was testing all of those things.
Wow. And so what is the final thing that you say, this is it, I've made it? What's the final thing?
Final thing is literally just whenever I start out with a recipe, I have in my head what I want to achieve out of it. And whether it's not just how good it tastes when you make it fresh, but specifically with vanilla cake, it has to be perfect the moment you make it. But I still want it to be very, very good 5 days later.
Yeah.
And most cakes are not. So most cakes are stale within 48 hours.
Yeah.
I very specifically wanted one that was still just as fresh 4 or 5 days later. So that was one of my key things. And once I tick all the boxes of what I'm after, then I know a recipe's ready to go.
All right. Do you get frustrated sometimes because there's an ingredient that's available there in Australia or Southeast Asia that just isn't available here? You said this would kick this up another notch.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a challenge, but I minimize the number of recipes I do like that. And I always offer substitutions. So that's one of the things the readers say they love the most about what I do, in that I can offer substitutions. So that's again another variation that I do when I'm testing my recipes. If there's a specific ingredient which is very Australia centric, which is actually, I can't think of a single recipe that you really can't get in the States. In fact, you're very fortunate over there. You have more things over there than we can get over here.
Ah,
So, there's some ingredients we can't really get over here that's very common for you. And I love them, like green chilies, canned green chilies.
oh,
You can
interesting.
have them. It drives me crazy because I love them. I use them in everything.
Yeah, and again, you mentioned there's a level of heat that people have to adjust to a little bit, and you give all of the variations so people can get it just
Yeah.
the way they want. I love that.
Yeah, but once you get to know the heat levels of different chilies and the cooking qualities and
Mhm.
which chilies will, reduce spiciness when you cook it, which ones get spicier when you cook it, then, it sort of becomes basic knowledge.
Yeah, just stay away from the Scotch bonnet, whatever you do. Who's your target audience? Who are you looking to reach with these books?
I would say I have a very unique demographic. I know most cooks, and especially on social media, people tend to have quite a narrow, specific target audience. For me, it's amazing. If you analyze my statistics, they range from 18 through to 74. And there is a slight higher concentration in the 34 to 45 bracket, but it's very marginal. And I think during the book tour that we've done over the last couple of weeks, and I've met and hugged and taken photos with and chatted to over 1,000 people just in the last 7 days. And it's phenomenal. I get 12-year-old children lining up to give me feedback on recipes as much as I do the 88-year-old grandma who drove 3 hours to come and say hello. So yeah, it's quite extraordinary and definitely a little bit more female, weighted towards females,
Mhm.
but a surprising number of males as well, which I love.
Well, I
So
think a great deal of it's your personality. You just sparkle and shine every time we see you or read something you read. Um, you don't ever get depressed, do you?
of course I get depressed. Well, I don't get depressed. I get upset. Of course I get upset. I'm the biggest crybaby I know. Course I go through my hard times. I'm not always smiley. It's just that obviously when I'm around my readers, for example, they make me happy. So I'm yeah, I'm laughing and I'm smiling and I'm chatting about food. That always makes me happy.
I was going to say, when you're feeling down, what's your go-to food to bring your spirits back up?
Oh, grilled cheese. That will pick me up every day of the week. A really good one though, Roger. You can't cheat. You got to do a really good one. Three different types of cheeses, and you have to pan fry it. You can't stick it in the microwave.
No, no,
None of
no.
that. None of that shortcut stuff.
No, it's got to have the crust on the outside. It just, I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Now I'm
Absolutely.
hungry. All right, thanks. Do you have a favorite out of this new batch of recipes?
You know what? It's actually the cover recipe. So the
Oh,
Korean barbecue chicken. And
oh,
it's so delicious. And you can bake it, you can barbecue it, you can pan fry it. And I chose it to be on the cover because it genuinely is probably my favorite recipe in the whole book. And it was a tough call.
yeah.
But it's just one of those, it's one of those trans-seasonal foods that I will happily eat all year round, but is especially good in summer when you can do outdoor grilling with your friends. But then it's so good in the dead middle of winter when you bake bone-in chicken pieces and they come out sticky and glistening and you can eat it with rice and the juices soaks into the rice and oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Obviously, this is why you are able to describe things so well that you make us all hungry just by listening to you. Speaking of the photography in this book, is this, I understand, do you take your own photos?
Yeah, I do. So not the ones with me in it because I can't focus on
Right.
myself,
Yeah.
but I do my own food photography and I do my own recipe videos as well. So
How long did
yeah,
it take you to do that, to get that perfected?
I would say to the point where I was confident in my photography, it took me 4 to 5 years.
Oh,
If you could
wow.
see my first photos, Roger, you would not want to eat it. I think I took 300 photos of the same brownie and none of the photos were appetizing at all. So yeah, it was certainly a learning curve. I'd never held a camera before I started my website. So it was one of
Wow.
the skills I had to learn.
Um, do you have a favorite tip for people who, one of those things that as a chef who does this for a living, you know, but most people don't, you want to share with our listeners?
What is there? Okay, here's one. When you're cooking pasta, you've got to emulsify the sauce by tossing the pasta with the sauce on the stove before you put it in the bowls. So none of this cooking pasta, putting the plain pasta in the bowl and then dumping your bolognese sauce on top. Never do that. You need to actually put the cooked pasta back in the pan with the sauce and toss it on the stove with a splash of the pasta cooking water, and it will change your pasta life because the sauce stains the pasta and flavors it. And the starch in the pasta cooking water will actually thicken the sauce and it makes it stick to every strand of pasta rather than ending up in the bottom of your bowl. And that is the goal. Because when you've got a bowl of pasta, you don't want the sauce to end up in the bowl and you've eaten all the pasta. You want that sauce stuck to the pasta. So it ends up right here in your mouth.
And that's a perfect way to close out. We know you've got a whole list of people to see today, but I do want to mention your website and where you're going to be appearing next in case it's anywhere around us.
I'm just sorting out the details for an American tour, actually. So I'm
Uh-huh.
very, very excited about that. So I probably shouldn't give too much away.
Okay. But mention your website.
Pardon?
Where's your website so people can
Oh,
listen to?
www.recipetinates.com. You will find updates, all my new recipes there, what I'm up to, and what my dog Dozer is up to.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us. Our guest today, Nagi Maeheshi. The book is delicious tonight. Wonderful book. Highly recommended. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Roger. Been a pleasure.
All right. Good luck. Go get them.
Thank you, Roger. Have a good one.